More Lord of the Rings video games may be on the horizon with Embracer's 10,000 developers. This number of Embracer Group developers could open up some new possibilities for the future of Lord of the Rings games. Does this mean more sophisticated games in the future? In this video, I have brought to you the news in detail. Make sure you stick with me to the end of the video to get the gist. Without any further delay, let's get into it. Where will the Embracer Group's main focus be on? Embracer Group now owns the rights to the Lord of the Rings video games, TV shows, and movies, among other media. And the company's CEO sees great potential for growth in the area of gaming specifically. This week, Lars Wingfors said at the MIPCOM Cannes event that gaming will be the Embracer's strongest area of growth and monetization for the Lord of the Rings. Embracer is among the world's largest video game companies by number of developers, and this opens up possibilities that smaller-scale publishers may not be able to accommodate, Wingfors said. He added that having 10,000 developers in the group means they are thinking about what they can do with intellectual property in the future, and this justifies the value for them. He also highlighted that then they have a number of amazing opportunities to do with transmedia projects, and that they can empower creatives to succeed with their goals and dreams. Embracer bought the movie, game, television board, theme park, theatrical production, and merchandising rights to The Lord of the Rings earlier this year. ACF Investment Bank Chief Executive Thomas Day, who negotiated the big deal, said The Lord of the Rings has the potential to grow to the size of Marvel and Star Wars, Day said, referring to Embracer that somebody just needed to have the belief that this can be as ambitious as it can be. In the television space, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power from Amazon Studios has just concluded its first season, and a new movie, War of the Rohirrim, is coming in 2024. Looking ahead, Embracer has said there is potential for spin-off movies dedicated to Gandalf, Aragorn, and Galadriel, among other characters. Next up, let's talk about the best Lord of the Rings games. As one of the most influential literary work of the 20th century and one of the most celebrated film adaptations of the 21st century, The Lord of the Rings has never really left popular culture, but it's undeniably getting more attention than usual lately. With the series The Rings of Power a few weeks after its premiere, orcs, elves, and dwarves were once again the protagonists of news and conversations. And with Embracer Group now owning the rights to the Lord of the Rings video games, I thought why not take advantage and also remember the best games that J.R.R. Tolkien's universe has given us over the years. So without further ado, let's journey to Middle-earth as we explore the best Lord of the Rings games ever. Starting off, we have The Return of the King. The modern era of games based on The Lord of the Rings began with a duel between Vivendi and Electronic Arts. Vivendi has licensed the books long before the movies were produced, but did not particularly trust them and passed up the opportunity to secure their rights as well. These were acquired by Electronic Arts, which was why, as soon as The Fellowship of the Ring was revealed as an adventure movie masterpiece, the two companies embarked on parallel development to take advantage of the pull. In 2002, a few months after the premiere of The Two Towers, Vivendi offered a version more faithful to the first book that, however, was left without sequels for failing in basic things such as gameplay. For its part, Electronic Arts decided to wait a little longer and unify the first two movies to create a collection of levels in the key of hack and slash interspersed between sequences directly taken from them. The actors also lent their likeness and even recorded new lines of dialogue, and the addictive combat system with slight RPG touches to gain experience and by new techniques managed to successfully replicate the viscerality of crowd fights. While it may look a bit crude to modern eyes, the on-screen action and cinematic qualities are impressive for software nearly 2 decades old. As far as film-to-game adaptations go, it's tough to beat this effort by Electronic Arts. You will be able to take on the roles of many of the saga's key characters as you fight through many of the Rod K's rich, engaging scenes. The solid multiplayer features only add to the fun. My next pick is The Battle for Middle-earth 2. Another example of a sequel that hit the right keys was the second part of The Battle for Middle-earth, a real-time strategy title that surprised fans of the genre a year after The Return of the King. Some early PC games had already mixed Tolkien's universe with troop management in the 1980s, but in the modern era, Electronic Arts once again beat Vivendi, who previously published their own RTS, War of the King, with an adaptation very marked by the aesthetics of the movie, although at the same time accessible and with enough playable substance. The Battle for Middle-earth 2 took its time and came a little over a year later with the Extended, which allowed for characters such as the elf Glorfindel or the dwarf King Dane and battles not present in the movie trilogy. Thus, the new game was not only deeper as an RTS, but also thanks to the inclusion of more factions and more types of units, with the possibility of creating our own hero or villain. The sense of scale increased and allowed to get more out of the Great War of the Ring mode, where we could fight in turns battles in all the regions of Middle-earth. Next up, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Somewhat less faithful to the Tolkien spirit, at least on a narrative level, there is the duo of games from Monolith Productions. After Electronic Arts changed several much more unfortunate projects than mentioned before, the license passed into the hands of Warner Brothers, who relied on the creators of FPS like Fear or Condemned to reimagine Middle-earth in an open-world action game. And that they did, with a story that would made some Legendarium fans tear their hair out because of the crude tone and many contradictions with established lore, but able to combat the sandbox routine thanks to the great Nemesis system. While on the surface it might seem like an Assassin's Creed ersatz, with its escalation and unlocking of maps with dozens of icons, the dynamic hierarchy of the orcs elevated the game into something of its own. Through this system of a procedural nature, surviving enemies could remember players in later battles, or seek them out to avenge friends. They even battled each other to climb the ranks, and later on, players were able to also mark and recruit or use one to assassinate the other without directly getting their hands dirty, creating a kind of fascinating organic orcish Game of Thrones. Our next best game is The Lord of the Rings Online. In 2007, the Turbine Studio, later acquired and absorbed by Warner Brothers, brought us an MMORPG of such quality that it still has an active user base today. An experience perhaps less intense and cinematic than other adaptations, but probably the best when it comes to making Middle-earth a large, alive, and believable space. The Shire, Bree, Rivendell, Edoras, Minas Tirith, none of the key locations were missing, recreated in more detail than the movies themselves, and accompanied by many others only known to readers of the novels. The narrative was also a neat aspect, weaving in with familiar canon events and characters, but expanding the world much further. And both the artistic direction and the soundtrack deserve their own mention. Although 15 years have passed, the care put into its setting continues to make it an ideal place to lose yourself without having to worry about goals. Strolling through the northern woods, riding through the plains of Rohan, or simply decorating a house in Hobbiton is just as satisfying, if not more so, than slaying orcs or engaging in heroic deeds. If that doesn't make it true to the Tolkien spirit, what else can? Wrapping it up, we have LEGO Lord of the Rings. We end with the most casual of the list, although not the worst. While it is true that there is almost no relevant fantasy or adventure franchise that does not have its own LEGO adaptation, The Lord of the Rings can still be counted among the best a decade after its premiere. Passed through the sieve of constant parody and a low difficulty to suit all audiences, Traveler's Tales recovered a brisk pace, similar to those first Electronic Arts movie adaptations, only now crowding the trilogy into a single game. The Shire, Moria, Helm's Deep, the Black Gate, all locations were rebuilt with toys, and moments as intense as Gandalf's battle against the Balrog, the charge of Rohan's horsemen in the Pelennor Fields, and other massive battles. In addition, true to LEGO tradition, all members of the Ring Company were controllable and had their own abilities that the level design required to advance, sometimes even in parallel, for different parts of the stage, ideal for cooperative and to introduce the little ones to the Tolkien universe. That concludes today's video. If you found the video helpful, please do consider giving us a thumbs up and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. See you in the next one.